The first encounter in the wreckage, the sky above the burned battlefield, was dark, filled with smoke and the smell of death. The war between humans and alien invaders had left this planet in ruins. Bodies were everywhere, metal, blood, and broken. Dreams mixed into the soil. Captain Jake Miller, a human soldier, walked carefully over the debris, scanning the area for survivors. He was tired, his armor scratched, his face covered in dust and pain. Scan complete. No signs of life. His AI drone reported, flying beside him with a soft beep. But Jake didn't believe that. He had seen too many battles, too many tricks. Sometimes survivors hid. Afraid to move, too scared to call out, he trusted his gut more than any machine. As he stepped over a collapsed wall, he heard it. A tiny sound like a whisper. A soft cry. He stopped, raised his weapon, and looked around slowly. The cry came again, weaker this time. He followed the sound to a pile of metal sheets, half buried under sand and wires. Jake bent down and pushed aside the debris carefully. His fingers brushed against something warm and shaking. There she was, a tiny alien girl. No bigger than his hand, curled up between the broken panels. Her skin was pale violet, glowing softly, her hair silver like moonlight. She wore a torn dress made from strange fibers, and her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She looked up at Jake, her glowing purple eyes full of terror. She screamed, a sharp sound like glass breaking, and tried to back away, but she was too weak, too tired. Jake dropped his weapon and raised both hands slowly. Hey, it's okay, he said softly. I won't hurt you. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was gentle. She hissed like a scared animal, her tiny claws trembling. Jake noticed a wound on her leg, bleeding lightly. He took a small cloth from his bag and reached forward slowly. She flinched but didn't run. He wrapped the cloth gently around her wound. She winced but stayed still. Jake smiled slightly. You're one brave little one. The girl blinked at him, confused, breathing fast. He opened his chest pocket, lined with soft fabric, and gently placed her inside. She tensed, but didn't resist. Safe there, he whispered. Just stay calm. He stood up and walked back to his ship. Each step shook the girl inside his pocket, but she stayed silent, outside. The battlefield faded behind him. Inside his heart, something new began to grow, something warm. Back at the base camp, soldiers stared at him as he walked in. Captain, is that ... an alien? Someone asked. Jake gave them a hard look. She's a child, he said, and she's with me now. No one argued, not after seeing the look in his eyes, in his private quarters. He placed the girl gently on a small table. She looked around. With wide eyes, afraid but curious, he offered her a piece of fruit from Earth, sweet and soft. She sniffed it, licked it, and slowly began to eat. Jake smiled. There you go. He turned on the translator device and pointed to himself. Jake, he said. She tilted her head, unsure. Yuck, she repeated softly, her voice like a melody. He pointed to her. She hesitated, then whispered, Alira. Her name sounded like wind passing through crystals. Jake repeated it slowly. Eli. Ra. She gave a small nod, eyes softer now. He made a tiny bed out of cotton. Inside a metal box lid, it looked like a doll's bed, but to her, it was perfect. She walked toward it. Dragging her little injured leg, Jake helped her in and covered her with a soft tissue. Lights off, silence all around. Jake lay on his bed, thinking, so small, so scared, yet still alive. What had she seen? What had she lost? The next morning, Jake woke up and felt a soft weight on his chest. He looked down, and there she was, Alira, curled up inside his chest pocket, sleeping peacefully, her small hands holding onto the fabric like it was home. He didn't move. He just smiled and whispered, You're safe now. For the first time in months, Jake felt peace. Not from a victory in war, but from the tiny heartbeat he now protected. She was no longer just a survivor. She was his responsibility, and maybe, just maybe, she was the reason he had survived this war. Asterisk, a name from the stars outside the ship, blinked slowly as it drifted in orbit above the ruined planet. Inside the human patrol vessel, everything was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Captain Jake Miller sat near the window, watching the stars as if searching for answers. Beside him, sitting inside a custom-made padded container, was the tiny alien girl, Elira. She had stopped shaking, but she still stared at him with wide eyes, always watching, never speaking much. Jake placed a small datapad near her and pulled up a picture of Earth. Green trees, blue oceans, clouds floating in the sky. He pointed and smiled. "That's my home," he said softly. Elira blinked slowly, her little hands resting in her lap. Then she looked at the screen, tilted her head, and whispered something. In her language, the translator picked it up and echoed. "Beautiful." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You like Earth?" She nodded once, carefully, as if unsure it was safe to express her thoughts. Jake scrolled through pictures of animals, foods, cities, and spaceports. Each one made Elira lean a little closer. Curiosity in her glowing eyes after a long pause. She looked up and pointed at him. She whispered a word in her language, and the translator translated, "Protector." Jake smiled, surprised. "Protector, huh? That's a big word for someone so small." Elira smiled slightly. For the first time, it was tiny and shy, but it was real. He opened the translator again and spoke slowly. "My name is Jake." Elia repeated it, soft and unsure. "Yak." Then he asked, "What is your name?" She hesitated, her small hands gripping her robe tightly. Then she said it, clear and proud, "Elira." Jake repeated it, letting it settle in his mouth like music. Elira. The name felt ancient, like something from the stars themselves. The translator beeped and displayed the meaning. Light after the storm. Jake looked at her, his voice gentle. "That's a beautiful name." She blinked and looked away, cheeks glowing softly. Days passed slowly inside the ship, but the bond between them grew stronger. Elira learned to sit on his shoulder when he walked, or hide inside his jacket pocket. She no longer flinched at his voice, and even laughed once when Jake tripped over his own boots. Her laughter was like bells, soft and strange. It reminded Jake of something he thought he had lost: joy. He showed her how to use the small screen, how to play music, and how to draw. Elira loved to draw, her tiny fingers creating bright shapes and glowing patterns. She drew stars, moons, tall spires of crystal, and flying creatures with wings like sails. Jake asked, "Is that your home?" She nodded, but her smile faded. He understood. Her world was gone. She had survived. But everything she knew was dust. Jake placed a hand over his heart and said, "I will protect you." The translator echoed his words back to her, and Elira's eyes glistened with tears she didn't let fall. One evening, an alert blinked on the control panel. A human cargo ship had arrived nearby, requesting a routine check. Jake opened the communication screen and saw an old friend, Commander Briggs. "Jake, long time no see," Briggs said with a smile. "You still flying solo?" Jake nodded. "Mostly," he said, glancing at Elira, who hid quietly inside his jacket. Briggs continued, "We're hauling tech parts. Want to share a drink while we refuel?" Jake hesitated, then agreed. Later, inside the shared dining bay of the larger ship, Briggs offered him a drink. Jake sat stiffly, knowing Elira was hidden safely in his pocket, wrapped in soft cloth. But Elira was trembling again. Too many lights, too many voices, the smell of fuel. And the loud human laughter it scared her. Jake whispered quietly, pressing a hand over his pocket. "You're okay? No one will hurt you." Briggs noticed the way Jake kept touching his jacket, and raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay, Captain?" he asked. Jake smiled. "Yeah, just carrying something important." Later, back on his ship, he sat down and opened the pocket. Elira crawled out slowly, her tiny body shaking from fear. Jake pulled out a small fruit cube and handed it to her. She took it, still silent, but her eyes looked at him with trust. That night, Jake set up a small hologram campfire. They sat beside it, him on the bed, her in her miniature cushioned seat. He told her stories about Eartha, about rivers, animals, and flying cars. Elira listened with wide eyes, sometimes asking questions through the translator. When she got sleepy, she curled up again in his jacket pocket. Yawning like a kitten, Jake lay back, watching the ceiling as stars blinked above. He whispered, "Good night, Elira." She didn't reply, already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Jake smiled. The war had taken so much from both of them, but maybe, just maybe, it had given them something to each other. The bond begins. Elira sat on the edge of the control panel, her small legs swinging over the side. Her eyes followed every move Jake made as he prepared the ship for its next mission. The screen displayed red warnings. Enemy signals had been detected on a nearby moon base. Jake sighed, strapping his gear on, knowing he would have to step into danger again. He glanced at the tiny alien girl beside him. Her face showed fear, but also something new: concern. "You can't stay here alone," Jake said, speaking softly. As he reached for a small pouch, he gently lifted Elira and placed her inside. Lining the pouch with soft cloth, she peeked out, wrapping her little arms around the edge of the fabric. Jake smiled. "Don't worry, we're a team now." The ship landed near the abandoned moonbase, where silent buildings stood like ghosts. Jake stepped out, scanning the area with his rifle in one hand. Elira peeked from his chest pocket, her eyes wide at the unfamiliar landscape. Silver dust floated in the air, and everything looked lifeless, but Jake stayed alert. As they entered a hallway, a noise echoed behind them. Jake turned sharply, his finger on the trigger. A shadow moved, followed by a loud crash. A group of hostile scavengers appeared from behind the broken walls, weapons in hand. "Back!" Jake shouted, firing 2 quick shots. The battle was fast, harsh, and brutal. Jake dodged, rolled, and defended with all he had, but one laser bolt grazed his side, burning into his armor and hitting flesh. He grunted, falling to one knee, clutching his ribs. Elira's heart raced, panic taking over without thinking. She jumped out of his pocket and ran toward him. Her tiny hands glowed brightly as she touched his wound. A wave of golden light spread across Jake's body. He gasped, feeling the pain fade, the burn cooling instantly. The scavengers watched in shock as the light shimmered around him. Jake stood back up, now stronger. He finished the fight quickly, forcing the last scavenger to flee into the shadows. Once it was over, Jake turned to Elira, still glowing and breathing heavily. She collapsed into his palm, exhausted, her energy completely drained. Jake held her close to his chest, his eyes wide in disbelief. "You healed me," he whispered. "You actually healed me." Elira gave a weak nod, her voice barely a whisper. "My kind. We can share life." Jake felt something shift inside him, not just amazement, but deep gratitude. He wrapped her in a soft cloth and placed her back into his chest pocket carefully. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said. "Not ever." Back on the ship, he gave her small drops of sugar water and let her rest in a quiet place. She slept for hours, curled up like a leaf, her body slowly recovering. Jake sat nearby the entire time, watching over her like a guardian. When she woke, she looked up and gave him a small smile. That smile hit him harder than any laser. It wasn't just trust. It was the beginning of a bond deeper than anything he had known. Over the next few days, they trained together. Jake taught her how to climb around the ship safely, how to use buttons, how to hide fast. Elira was smart, learning quickly, laughing softly whenever she did something right. Jake even made her a small communication badge with her name engraved in it. When he gave it to her, she stared at it, touched it gently, then hugged his thumb. One evening, Jake shared a story about his brother who died in the war. Elira listened carefully, and then told him about her mother, how she sang songs made of starlight. They didn't understand every word, but the feeling was always clear. During rest time, she began to curl up inside his jacket automatically. It became her favorite place, warm, close, and safe. Jake stopped seeing her as a lost alien. To him, she was now family. One morning, the ship received an urgent call. An old Earth colony station was under attack by mercenaries. They needed help, and Jake was the closest responder. As he suited up, Elira climbed up to his shoulder and looked at him with calm eyes. "I want to help," she said through the translator. Jake paused, then nodded, then stay close. They flew toward the station together, ready for whatever came next. No longer just a soldier and a survivor, but a team. A bond had begun, one born in fire, sealed by healing and now unbreakable. The galaxy had no idea what this tiny girl and one tired human could do together, but they would soon learn. Asterisk danger in the shadows. The stars above the spaceport blinked cold and distant. Jake landed his ship on a human-controlled outpost near the edge of the neutral zone. It was supposed to be a quiet stop, just a place to rest, refuel, and stay hidden. But from the moment they arrived, something felt wrong. Elira stayed tucked in his chest pocket, her little hands gripping the fabric tightly. She whispered, "Too many eyes." Jake nodded silently. The spaceport was filled with mercenaries, bounty hunters, and traders from different corners of the galaxy. Their faces showed no warmth, only hunger for opportunity and gold. Posters on the walls flickered. With digital bounties, most were criminals. Some were rebels, and then Jake saw it. His blood ran cold, a bounty clear and flashing red. A reward of 2 million credits for the surviving child of the Lysari race. Elira's photo was grainy but clear enough. The words below read, "Dead" or "Alive, high priority." Jake turned quickly and walked back toward his ship. But he knew someone must have already seen the bounty. He whispered to Elira, "Don't say a word." Her tiny body trembled. But she stayed hidden inside the shadows of his jacket as they passed through the marketplace. A tall alien with yellow skin and glowing red eyes stepped into Jake's path. "Nice jacket," he growled. "Mind if I check what's inside?" Jake smiled calmly, his hand near his weapon. "Not today," he said, and shoved past him without hesitation. 2 more figures began to follow from behind. Jake picked up speed, pretending to walk casually. But his heart was pounding. Elira whispered, "Danger behind us." "I know," Jake replied. "Hold on." He darted into a narrow maintenance tunnel, twisting left and right. Metal pipes hissed with steam. Shadows danced on the walls. He reached a locked door, slammed his hand on the scanner, and forced it open. They entered a dim, abandoned storage bay. Lit only by blinking emergency lights, Jake locked the door behind them, but he knew it wouldn't hold for long. He placed Elira gently on a crate and took out a small weapon. "We're not safe here," he said, breathing hard. "They know you're alive." Elira looked down, her small voice shaking. "They want to use me, Jake." Knelt beside her. "They won't get the chance." A loud bang echoed from the door, then another. They were breaking through. Elira's eyes glowed, her tiny hands lighting up with soft, golden energy. But Jake stopped her. "Save your strength. Let me handle this." The door burst open. and 3 bounty hunters stormed in. Jake fired fast and accurate, hitting the first in the shoulder. The second fired back, grazing Jake's arm. He growled through the pain and dove behind a crate. Elira ducked low, covering her ears from the noise. Jake rolled, fired again, and knocked out the second attacker. The third one ran toward Elira, knife in hand. Jake's heart stopped, but Elira stood up, her hands glowing bright. She screamed, and a pulse of light burst from her body. The bounty hunter was thrown across the room, crashing into the... While smoke filled the air, silence followed, only broken by Jake's heavy breathing. He rushed to her side, picking her up. "You okay?" he asked, holding her close. She nodded. Exhausted? I didn't want to hurt him. But he tried to take me. Jake looked at her with pride. You did what you had to do. He grabbed a cloaking device from one of the hunter's belts and wrapped it around them both, together, invisible. They snuck back through the tunnels and returned to the ship, once inside. Jake locked the doors and activated the ship's defensive shield. He laid Elira down in her tiny bed and sat beside her. The ship took off silently, engines humming as they escaped the spaceport. Jake stared out the window, his eyes cold. "They're hunting you now," he said. "And that means they're hunting me too." Elira sat up slowly, her voice soft. "I don't want you hurt because of me." Jake shook his head. "You're not a burden, Elira. You're a miracle." She blinked, surprised. Jake continued. "They fear you because they know the power inside you. But I'm not afraid." She crawled into his pocket once again. This time, not from fear, but from trust. Her tiny hands clutched the cloth gently. Jake sighed, leaning back in his chair. Darkness lay ahead, enemies in every corner, but he would protect her with everything he had in that moment. He didn't feel like a soldier or a hero. He felt like something more, a guardian of something pure and precious, and the shadows behind them. They were just reminders of how bright her light could shine. A new home in the void. The ship floated silently through the cold vacuum of space. Behind them was danger, bounty hunters, and betrayal. Ahead of them, nothing but unknown stars and uncharted systems. Jake stared at the holographic map, his eyes tired but focused. He needed a place to hide, somewhere safe. Somewhere no one would think to search. Elira peeked out from his jacket pocket, her small eyes glowing in the dim light. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. Jake glanced down at her. A place no one's been in years. He tapped a glowing dot on the map, an old asteroid field, abandoned after a mining disaster. Elira blinked. "Is it dangerous?" Jake gave a small smile. "Everywhere is dangerous now. Might as well go where no one wants to follow." The ship jumped into hyperspeed, stars stretching into lines. Elira curled up in his hand, resting her head against his palm. Jake looked down at her and whispered, "You'll like it, I think." A few hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace. Ahead floated a massive asteroid field. The rocks spinning slowly like frozen giants. In the center of the field, hidden behind a cluster of magnetic shadows, was an old mining station. It was broken, dark, and looked forgotten, but Jake smiled. Perfect. They landed the ship inside the cracked docking bay. Jake wore a sealed helmet just in case, and Elira sat on his shoulder. Wrapped in a cloth hood, the station was dusty. Wires hung from the ceiling, and old machines sat silent under layers of metal rust. Jake walked through the halls, checking for signs of life. There were none. Just empty rooms, old data panels, and echoes. He found a control room and activated emergency power. A low hum filled the air. Lights flickered, and weak systems came online, still breathing. Jake muttered, "We can work with this." He cleared out a small room for them, repaired the air system, and sealed it tightly. He even set up a small heating unit and cleaned a glass panel so they could see the stars. Elira wandered around the new home slowly, her eyes wide. She touched a cracked wall, and whispered, "It feels lonely." Jake nodded. "Yeah, it's been empty, eh?" "Long time?" She looked at him. "Not anymore." Together, they began to fix the space. Jake repaired panels and pipes, while Elira used her glowing hands to reactivate old circuits. When she touched certain crystals, the walls lit up with soft, natural light. Jake stared. In awe, "You really are something special." Elira smiled shyly. "I like fixing things." By the third day, the station felt alive again. Jake had created a bed for himself using parts of a crashed cargo unit. And for Elira, he built a tiny living space inside a metal box, lined with cloth and soft fabric from an old uniform. He even carved little symbols into the wall above. Her bed stars, planets, and her name in her language. When she saw it, her face lit up with pure joy. "This is mine." She asked. Jake nodded. "All yours." She hugged his thumb tightly, tears forming in her eyes. Jake said nothing, but inside, he felt something warm. Something like peace. They began to build routines. Jake trained in the open hall, running drills while Elira watched from the vents above. He taught her human songs. And she taught him old Lysari prayers. They ate together, laughed together, and shared stories beneath the soft glow of artificial stars. One night, while they sat watching the stars from the window, Elira asked a question. "Do you think my people are really gone?" Jake stayed silent for a moment, then said, "I don't know, but if any are alive, I'll help you find them." She placed her hand over his heart and said, "You already feel like home." Suddenly, the warning alarm beeped. Jake rushed to the console, his heart pounding. A small tracking drone had entered the asteroid field. It hovered just outside the mining station's range. Scanning slowly, Jake's face hardened. "They found us." He shut down all power, turned off the heat, and muted every system. The station went dark, cold, and silent again. He held Elira close and whispered, "Don't make a sound." For hours, they sat in silence, listening to the quiet hum of the drone outside. It circled the station once, twice, then drifted away into space. Jake waited a full hour before breathing deeply. He turned to Elira. "They'll keep coming." She looked up at him, her voice calm. "Then we'll keep hiding, together." Jake smiled. Together, in the darkness of the forgotten station, surrounded by stars and silence. A tiny alien girl and a human soldier had created something no one expected, a home. And from this home, the galaxy would soon witness something powerful. The bond between two survivors, unbreakable and full of light. The final stand, the silence of the asteroid field was broken by a deep, distant rumble. Jake looked out the cracked observation window, his jaw tightening. A shadow moved between the stars, a massive alien warship entering the system. It was black, jagged, and pulsing with red lights, like a wounded beast searching for blood. They had found them, and this time, they were not sending a drone. Elira stood on the console, her small hands gripping the edge. Her eyes stared at the ship in fear. But there was also something else, a quiet fire. "They came for me," she whispered. Jake nodded, loading his rifle. "Then they'll have to deal with me first." The mining station trembled as the warship powered its weapons. Jake activated the old defense grid, weak, half functional, but better than nothing. Energy cannons rose from the outer wall, charging slowly with a high-pitched hum. The power core inside the station blinked red, unable to support full shields. And weapons together. Jake cursed under his breath. "Not enough juice." Elia stepped forward, her glow brightening. "I can help," she said. "I can give the station what it needs." Jake shook his head. "You'll burn yourself out." She looked at him, voice steady. "Then let me burn, if it means saving us." He stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, "You're braver than any soldier I've ever met." She climbed onto the control platform and placed her glowing hands on the main power crystal. The room lit up instantly, the red warning lights turning gold. The cannons charged faster. The shields hummed louder. Elira's body trembled, her breath shallow. But she kept going. Outside, the alien ship launched its first Strike 2 plasma torpedoes, screamed toward the station. Jake took control of the turrets, aiming with steady hands. He fired, striking both torpedoes before they hit. Explosions lit up the dark like twin suns. The alien ship responded with a full barrage. Shaking the station violently, panels fell. Lights flickered and sparks rained down. Elira cried out, the energy burning through her. Jake turned to her. "That's enough. Stop." But she shook her head. "Not until you're safe." The station's hidden defenses activated, long forgotten. Crystal towers on the asteroid surface rose from the rock, ancient tech glowing with power. Jake stared in disbelief. "What is this?" Elira whispered, "My people built this place long ago. A sanctuary, a last defense," as she poured energy into the core. The crystals outside linked together, forming a shield dome over the station. The alien warship fired again, but the beams deflected, bouncing off the ancient shield. Inside, Elira collapsed, her glow dimming. Jake rushed to her, scooping her up gently. Her body was cold, her voice faint. Did it work? Jake held her close. "You saved us." The alien ship circled the asteroid, unable to break through. Then, after long minutes of scanning and failing, it turned away and vanished into deep space. Jake sat beside the power crystal, holding Elira. In his hands, she looked like a dying star, beautiful, fragile, fading. He whispered, "You're going to be okay. You have to be." He searched through the station system and found something. An old healing chamber used by the Lysari engineers, who once worked here. It was small, perfect for someone her size. He placed her inside and activated it. Blue lights wrapped around her, scanning and repairing her cells slowly. Jake waited for hours, never leaving the chamber's side. Finally, her glow returned, faint but steady. Her eyes opened, tired but alive. "You didn't leave me," she whispered. He smiled. "Never." Later, he stood near the window with her sitting quietly on his shoulder. Together, they watched. The asteroid field glows softly around them. Jake looked at her and said, "You were willing to give everything to protect this place." Elira nodded. "Because it's not just metal and walls?" he asked. "Then what is it?" She answered, "It's the first place I felt safe since my world died." Jake reached up and gently touched her hand. "Well then, let's make it more than just a place to hide." He smiled. "Let's make it home." She curled up on his shoulder, her head resting gently near his neck. Outside, stars drifted slowly by, and the silence returned, not cold, but peaceful. The station, once forgotten, now stood as a symbol of survival, and inside it, a soldier and a tiny alien girl had turned battle into belonging. They had made their stand and won. The galaxy's smallest hero, the galaxy, had changed. Though most didn't know it yet, news spread slowly across the outer systems. Rumor, a whisper, a story too strange to believe. They said a soldier had protected a child from a dead race. They said a tiny alien girl had held off a warship with nothing but light. And deep in a forgotten mining station, the truth waited quietly among the stars. Elia stood near the window, her little hands pressed against the cold glass. She watched distant suns burn, their light reaching her small eyes after 1,000 years. Behind her, Jake worked at a console, upgrading the station's communication system. Signal boost complete. He said, wiping his hands, "We can talk to anyone." Now Elira turned, her voice soft. "Will they come?" Jake nodded slowly. "They'll come, some to help, some to hunt." Elira walked to him, her steps quiet. I'm not afraid anymore," he smiled. "That's because you faced worse and survived." Later that day, a message came. Through the system, it wasn't from a bounty hunter or mercenary. It was from a Lysari beacon weak, but real. Jake and Elira stared at the screen. Hearts racing, coordinates match an old Lysari science outpost. Jake said, surprised, "More survivors." Elira whispered, her voice trembling. Jake nodded. "We have to find out." The journey to the outpost wasn't easy. Old space lanes were blocked, asteroid belts had shifted. But after days of flying through silence and starlight, they arrived. The outpost was buried under layers of crystal and dust. But when Jake cleared the entrance and stepped inside, the lights activated. Voices called out in surprise. Soft and melodic. Lysari survivors. Older and weaker, but alive, they gasped. When they saw Elira, they knelt before her, their hands glowing. "You carry the last spark," one elder said. Elira looked confused. "I'm just a child," the elder smiled. "You are more than that. You are our light reborn." Jake watched from the side, pride swelling in his chest. He had carried her from rubble, protected her through fire, and now she stood tall, small in size, but larger than life. The elders explained that Elira had unlocked ancient tech in the mining station, a power even they had lost access to long ago. "You woke the heart of Lysari memory," the elder said. "You gave our race hope again." Elira's hands trembled. "I didn't mean to be important." Jake stepped beside her. "Sometimes the ones who don't want power are the ones who use it best." The survivors chose to stay hidden, afraid of the galaxy's cruelty. But they offered Jake and Elira something: records, technology, and knowledge. They gave her a crystal pendant, glowing with her people's energy. It would guide her, protect her, and one day, lead others to safety. Jake and Elira returned to the mining station, their ship now carrying secrets. She wore the pendant proudly, a symbol of what she had become in the weeks that followed. Peaceful species across the sector began reaching out. Not to fight, but to talk. The name Elira started appearing in whispers of peace movements. One day, a human ambassador visited the station. He looked around in disbelief. This is the place from the reports." Jake nodded, arms crossed. "This is the place, and she's the one who saved it." The ambassador kneeled down and looked at Elira. "You've done something big, little one," he said. Elira simply smiled, then climbed into Jake's pocket, curling up like always. The ambassador laughed softly. A galaxy changer in a soldier's coat pocket. "Never thought I'd see the day." Jake just shrugged. "She's home, over time." The mining station became more than a hideout. It became a neutral ground, a place for conversation and healing. And in its heart lived the smallest hero anyone had ever known. She still liked soft cloth, sweet fruit cubes, and listening to earth music. But she also studied every day, learned history, science, and diplomacy. Jake built her a command center her size, complete with voice access and star maps. They trained together, still her mind sharp, his instincts steady, and at night, when everything was calm, she always returned to his pocket. It was more than comfort. It was a reminder of where she had started, and who had carried her through. The fire, the galaxy would remember the great battles, the alliances, and the politics. But somewhere in those stories, one tale stood out. A tiny alien girl who survived a war, healed a soldier, and saved a forgotten place. Not with armies, not with weapons, but with trust, courage, and a heart too big for her little body. And the soldier who had once thought he had lost everything had found something better: family, purpose, and a reason to keep going. They were more than a team. They were a legend in the making. And while she slept in his pocket each night, the stars above kept watch, because even the galaxy knows a hero doesn't have to be big to change everything.